Hello and welcome everyone again to our Tuesday Night Smite podcast. Today's episode is going to be episode 8. We are going to do a recap to Dreamhack Valencia that happened last weekend. I'm going to be your host for today. My name is the Robbie Dog. I'm here with Psycho and Sabo as always. And yeah, Dreamhack is the topic. It happened. What happened? Psycho, can you lead us in maybe? Tell us something.
So the big thing at Dreamhack was you just are showing again that they are just dominant over NA. Because we saw 3 EU to NA games and all of them were won by EU. And that went on to have a full EU semi-final, with EU also beating the Latin American team, Black Dragons.
So yeah, what I think is interesting to talk about is the fashion in which NA got beat, specifically the differences between that, looking at the different sets that happened, right? Because on the one hand, we had Trifecta obviously taking it to Game 3 against Energy and almost winning the entire series in Game 2. So they could have 2-0'd easily, right? Which would have been insane. And on the other hand, we had SSG, so Space Station and Luminosity just getting completely wiped by their respective opponents, so like both going 2-0.
I think it's more interesting to talk about how Trifecta fell apart because Space Station and Luminosity didn't. They might as well have not even gotten off the plane with how they played. I mean, did I expect either of them to win? No. I thought Rival and Obey were too strong. I obviously said last week's live episode that I thought Obey was the best team in the world and that they would easily beat LG if Gary D didn't have a good performance, and he got first blooded both games. So, and then where was Homie Faye? I think there's still a search party out for him because he's just missing, or he was missing. I'm not sure, what his excuse is for not making impacts at these live events anymore. Because, I mean, it's a thing now. He's been to every LAN for a year straight, except for Worlds last year, and he has done nothing on these LANs outside of a Group D second place finish where Enemy was struggling and Envious wasn't even going to have a shot at making Super Regionals. So, again, Homie Faye's gone, but let's go back to Trifecta and Energy for a moment. I mean, you said they could have 2-0'd. Well, they should have 2-0'd, in my opinion. There was a point in Game 2 where they had a 20k gold lead, and it was getting later in the game, so the gold wasn't as important as it would have been earlier. But they had just taken a team fight against Energy. It was only adapting up for the 35 seconds. It was 4v1. And they realistically could have gone and got 1 or 2 Phoenixes and maybe ended the game. But they decided to fall back and go for Fire Giant and allow respawns to happen. That siege, in my opinion, goes better if you have fire minions with you. I would have at least taken the middle Phoenix and then went to the Fire Giant. Because even good as adapting is, it's still 4v1 in a late game. You have the damage to blow him up if he tries anything. And if he gets one of you, so what? You still got 3 people to take the Phoenix. That situation, in my opinion, you have to be smarter if you're Trifecta to know that you can end the game there.
Yeah, I think you can pin it to some of these issues. I think both teams didn't play optimally, right? They probably didn't always make the best decision possible if you were to look into it really closely, in my opinion. So I'm not sure we can fault the entire trifecta losing on that one thing, right? Even though they could have won based off of that. But if
there were a lot of things late in game 2 that Energy did well that stopped them from losing that game, but Trifecta would have realized the situation they were in. They could have. That was just one of 2 or 3 different situations where they could have ended the game and won the set 2-0.
Yeah, but if you point those out, did you also see any situations where Energy could have won the game? Apart from the one where they obviously then did, that we didn't actually get to see.
Well, with 20k goal lead, it's kind of hard to pinpoint where you can win the game. But like I said, it is later. It was later in the match, and the gold wasn't so important. All the items were online. It was basically out like for power pods. That's the only difference gold was making at that point. Late game team fights are the key. When you get that late, Energy just had a better late game team fight than Trifecta, and they won off of that. We didn't get to see it, but before it went down, they had already killed 2 Trifecta players, and were pushing into Trifecta's jungle between where Tier 2 and Soul Lane would have stood and Speed Buff. Like, they were already pushing into that point before we lost the stream, or before High Res lost the stream. So it's just late game team fight in game 2 when won it for Energy, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about late game team fights always is, if they are focused on one area, the team that gets the first kill or the first couple of kills will usually just snowball through the rest of the fight and then end up winning the game of that, obviously. Unless you have some option to retreat that it didn't look like Trifecta had in that last fight that we only saw at the beginning of, really. But yeah, I think it's what it really came down to, as you said, is to those late game team fights, and once it gets to that stage, it gives a big advantage to the team with more experience, if you ask me, because they have simply been in more games against other top tier opposition where it has gone to these late game fights that you can't really practice for as easily as for the entire rest of the game. And it's also a bit about composure and trying to keep everything together and still recall the top level of play that is possible to you, right? And
yeah, I agree. You gotta also include which team is more mechanically sound in hitting their abilities and hitting their autos. And Energy's not 2-time world champions for there's a reason why they're 2-time world champions. They're all mechanically sound, and late game team fights where everything is even. You have the same amount. You're the same level. You have the same amount of items online. It's who can hit their abilities the best and who can string together each chains the best. And Energy is just you're right. The experience helped Energy in that situation.
Yeah, and what I was always going to say is that it's in these situations it's always a bit down to luck, honestly. Like there are things that you just can't really account for, and you don't always have full information, right? So you have to take guesses to some extent, and if they end up being right, it can win you the fight and the game. And so it's always a bit down to luck as well, right? I think Trifecta could easily won that fight as well, or could have won a fight that could have brought them victory as well. But in this case, they just didn't, and yeah, Energy obviously ended up winning that game.
I go back to my point about Trifecta having multiple possibilities to end that game and win the set 2-0, and it looked like they were too timid to try. Like, they were too timid to try to push forward and end the game. Energy was, for the most part, taking the initiation and starting the fights before Trifecta was really, wanting to at that point. And it just looked like Energy was, even though they were down, Energy was on the front foot, and Trifecta was just, I don't want to say they were too scared to try to end the game, but they let their gold lead, they let the time stretch out too far, that where their gold lead just didn't make a bit of difference. And like I said, you have to have the knowledge and the willingness to realize that, hey, we have the advantage. We can end this here. Because at that point, 20k down, Energy is just looking to extend the game, and they extended the game to a point where Trifecta's lead didn't matter at all.
Well, I'm gonna go back to the big fight. I think it was a matter of the compositions and the picks that the teams had. Because when we look back at the Trifecta team, they wanted to pick someone off and then fight 5v4 with that Sobek pluck, Naja, and Scylla combo. But then NRG had a Gepri to counter that, and I think that won them the fight because it kind of killed what Trifecta wanted to do. And NRG still had some big off potential with their Morrigan and with their Kamazats.
Well, bring up composition. It's all about adapting to how the situation or how the game is playing out. No, I don't mean the player. I mean actual adapting to the how the game is playing. That Sobek Nija combo was working early game. That's how they got their lead. Energy recognized that and took active steps to stop that. Kepri was, for the most part, was the one getting picked early in the game. It was, I think Rafford died like 3 or 4 times to that combo alone in the first 25 minutes, if I'm not wrong. And then they did a good job of assessing the situation and changing their game plan to really work around that, where Raffer wasn't the one getting picked. He could get his ultimate off on these other, on his teammates. I think he saved Demi a couple of times where the Trifecta would have picked Demi. They could have gotten more off of that than they would if Kepri wasn't in the game. But I'm giving credit to Energy as much as I can, but I do believe Trifecta should have won that game.
Yeah, I think as you explained, they had their opportunities too, and if you miss those opportunities, then I think it's fair to say that they did throw it to some extent, right? But still, you have to, as you also said, you have to give some credit to Energy, especially to Yaman, I think, because he was basically the one who initiated that game-changing fight, right? Him with his invisibility getting close to someone and just blowing them up, as far as I remember. And I think that's one of the interesting aspects of this character, the Morrigan, just in general, is how powerful her invisibility can be, just because invisibility in general is so powerful, right? So yeah, just a quick little dive into a different topic, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, Yemen kept blowing up Kerwind and Snoopy, and those are the tower pushers. And if one or both of them are out of the fight, the fight automatically swings in Trifecta's favor. So I do it, or swings in Energy's favor. So you're right about Yemen having such a big impact later in the game. And we don't usually get to see that out of a Morgan because the games don't last that long. So it's a good view of what Morgan can do later in the game if on the right player with the right build. He had a lot of pin in that build, and saw Herwin, get two-shotted. So.
Yeah.
If we can leave the second game and just talk about the whole set, I'm just gonna go back again and say that NRG, again, they got mad after losing game 1. Game 2 was close, and game 3 was a complete stomp. So just kind of keeping their online stage games for the first one of the Dreamhack.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it was a little bit of skill and a whole lot of luck. I think all three of us agree that all three of us should agree that Trifecta should have won game 2. But due to their own mistakes and Energy's experience, Energy was able to pull that one out. A more experienced Trifecta team closes that one out in 2 games. They didn't. Energy was able to pull game 2 out, and then, like you said, game 3 was a stomp. So.
Yeah, I think game 3 being such a stomp was more down to Trifecta than really Energy, in my opinion, because they seemed like they were just completely down, and that loss in game 2 where they had such a big lead really hurt them a lot. So
yeah, you could see it mentally broke them.
Yeah, but we obviously talked last week about how we thought Energy was a team that could ramp up as the set went on, and this somewhat confirms that idea, right? Looking at how the set went, because they had a decent performance in game 1. It just didn't really look like they would have a real chance to win the game, in my opinion. They had their chances during the entire time in game 2, if you ask me, and then in game 3 we had the stomp. So we saw a bit of a ramp up. It's just questionable whether it's more due to Energy ramping up or due to Trifecta getting progressively more tired and just getting their morale shattered at the end of game 2. But yeah.
I'm disagreeing about how you said its Energy ramps up as the set goes on. I think, and of course I could be wrong, but I think that this was an indicator that Energy doesn't have that anymore. They don't have that let me get angry or get us angry and we're going to stomp you later in the set. I don't think they have that anymore because the teams are getting better. Especially, we saw Rival make it to the finals. Dig obviously is the champions. We'll get to them later. Obey is the spring split champions. The teams are getting better, and I don't think just Energy or just making Energy angry makes them better. They were in trouble in game 2, and they needed every bit of Trifecta's mistakes. They needed all Trifecta's mistakes to happen for them to find that win in game 2. And then, like I said, Trifecta was mentally broken after that game 2, and Energy stopped. I don't think making Energy angry had anything to do with that set. I believe that it was Trifecta's mistakes that really helped Energy win.
Well, the way I look at it is, I think we saw some improvement from out of Energy each game, right? And I think the result shows that as well, right? Obviously, Trifecta dived off the fucking cliff in Game 3 and just completely play like crap. But still, I think Energy in that Game 3 also played better than they did in the previous two games. So I think there's still a ramp up going on. It's just not enough, in my opinion, against the top EU opposition. And it obviously was very close to not being enough against this Trifecta roster. So that is for, as far as Energy concerned, that is a bit of a worrying trend if you look at it that way. But I do not think that the fact that they've split against the other top teams in EU during the regular split and pretty much always won the second game is not. It doesn't have any relevance at all, right? I think it still shows you that there is a ramp up that happens within Energy as the set goes on, which is why they generally look stronger in Game 2 than they do in Game 1. And from what we've seen, it appears they look stronger in the later games as well. So we obviously only saw Game 3s out of them. We'll get to that later on, to their set in the semis. But I still think there's ramping up there, but it's just not as significant as maybe we were expecting it to be. So yeah.
I think if you take the fear factor away from Energy, then they're not other teams don't play as scared against them as they would have last year. Last season, or during their their defending championship season, a lot of the teams were playing scared against them. Even the top AU teams, were playing scared against Energy, because the big point of last season was Energy gets to 15 minutes, they turn it on, and they run away with the game. And you saw that happen a lot of times. Towards the later end of the season, especially during Obey's run to Worlds, less and less teams were starting to get worried about that 15-minute mark where Energy would turn it on and would really stop them from doing it. And I think if you can stop Energy from doing that, and you take that fear out of playing Energy away, then they're just a normal run-of-the-mill team like you would. I mean, they're still a top team, but they're not as dominant because of it.
I think that goes on to tell what really happened, because we saw, like, one time the big thing was NRG grouping in mid at 14 minutes and taking a tower. Then it moved to 60 minutes, then to 20 minutes, and then it just kind of disappeared. Because precisely teams really stopped playing scared, and also the meta shifted to a more late game oriented game.
Well,
Yeah.
do we want to move on? I mean, I don't know.
There's just one thing more that I will really want to talk about as far as the set is concerned, and it is about Neef. Because I remember both me and Psycho were sitting in our chat group during that set and talking about how we disliked the Neef pick to some extent, right? Psycho?
Yeah, like, you can pick Kronos. He was bad in the second phase, but I think Emilito is really good underneath, but she's not. It wasn't her place in the games. Like I just don't. It's hard to say because I just didn't want to see Neath from that set or in those games.
Yeah. Like my issue with it was mostly that it just didn't seem like it was putting out enough damage against Kiki specifically. Like Kiki was playing the Odin in both of those first two games, and it didn't seem like Emilito was actually able to to get him to back off from his like frontline position a bit. Which is generally what your hunter is supposed to do, right? Your sustained DPS is supposed to counter the large defense and health pool of a warrior, and Kiki, because he got fed and got so far ahead, and then because Energy didn't have a proper DPS source that you'd see out of a different hunter, a Rama or even a Kronos, etc.
Or an Amazon Cup, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Just in general, like because they didn't have that, it seemed like they always struggled to actually get down Kiki, and it just allowed him to run rampant in their backline during the entire game. And yeah, I think it was a big part of the issue was that they were lacking that damage that is normally supposed to come from your hunter, but Emil just wasn't able to do due to the Neath pick.
If Neath was because of the big off potential, it didn't work game 1 and wasn't needed game 2 because of the Morrigan.
No, I feel like the only issue with the Neath really is player. I mean, Neath's a good solid pick, especially in the early to mid game where her ultimate can help you apply so much map pressure. But Emilito is one of those hunters that do better on these major carry gods like late game Kronos. You know, we haven't seen Chibalanke in a while, but you know that kind of carry potential is where I like to see Emilito on the most, and putting him on a god that really has nothing in the late game outside of a couple roots and. You know, you're not going to, unless the person is really low late game, you're not going to finish them off with just an ultimate. You're usually using that ultimate for the stun potential, the CC potential later in the game. So I would like to have seen Emilito on a more later game carry kind of god and not the Neath.
Yeah. And as Psycho already mentioned, the AMC, that's a topic we can talk about as well, right? Because Trifecta did bring him out in game 1, and we were both leveling a lot of criticism against it, again in our chat. Obviously, it wasn't justified because he won, right?
Well, as an NA guy, I was not surprised by the AMC pick because Snoopy has done it like 3 or 4 times throughout the season, so you know it was not a surprise to see him pick AMC. I think it caught Energy by surprise, but you know, as a fan of NA, I wasn't surprised by it at all. And the fact that he executed and they won with it, it's not surprising either. So.
Yeah, no. What do you mean when you say that he was bringing it out during the season? Did he actually play an SPL game with AMC? Because I don't remember that.
Yes, he's played I think he played 2 in the spring split, and I think he's brought it out once in the summer split so far. And then the one at Dreamhack. You know, it's not surprising to see. I've seen it before. I've seen it this season from Snoopy. I can't tell you which games, but I've seen it this season from Snoopy. Yeah, don't forget.
More Vulcan than Amazon Gap, as far as I remember.
Yeah, it's weird. I do not remember seeing him play the AMC in the summer split.
Yeah, same.
So I'm just confused right now. My memory's starting to fall off.
AMC is one of Snoopy's pocket picks, so I'm not surprised at all that he brought it out.
Yeah. But to go back to specifically how it did in this game, we saw NRG trying to shut it down, right? Early on, I think he got ganked by adapting 2 times and killed both of those times, as far as I know. And then in a third time, I think he managed to escape. And obviously, the issue to me was from that is that there weren't enough ganks on it, right? He was supposed to have died like 3 or 4 times before he gets to level 12, in my opinion, because it's AMC. You can abuse AMC, and you have to if you want to keep him down. And to some extent, Energy didn't do that, and they ended up paying for it because Snoopy got 10 kills that game.
Snoopy is one of those all-time great hunters in Smite. He's one of those that you can look back from the very start of Smite and say, this guy's one of the star players. He knows what Energy was wanting to do and abusing that AMC. So you saw him adjust his game towards, staying a little bit further back, warding a little bit more than what hunters would usually ward. And then, like you said, from 0-2 to what, like 10-3? What was his final stat line? Was it
10, 7, and 7.
10, 7, 7. Okay. Well, still, he went from 0-2 to with 10 kills. So, that it worked.
Yeah, but the only thing I'm saying is that I think you can criticize Energy, specifically in that game 1, because they didn't shut him down properly, right? My issue is not that he escaped from ganks, which he did, I think, once or twice overall. My issue is that he only had to escape from ganks once or twice. So I think they didn't do enough, right? And it obviously hurt them then in the end. But yeah, AMC as a pick coming out, actually winning, that was exciting stuff. And yeah.
Surprise for you guys. It was not a surprise for me.
Yeah, you're our NA expert, so you're expected to not be surprised by anything NA does.
I did also say Trifecta had the best shot at winning. Trifecta was the only one with the shot at winning. So.
Yeah, but hey, our predictions for Trifecta being the best NA team, or looking like it, were all true, right? So we're all geniuses. It's confirmed now. But yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
I said I'll give you that one.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. So yeah, I think that about wraps it up for as far as the set is concerned, right? We're gonna probably go into more detail about Energy as a team and about Trifecta as a team as a whole in a later episode when we really do a recap of the entire split, including Dreamhack. But yeah, let's move on to the other 2 sets that we haven't gone into too much depth yet, which were obviously Space Station against Rival and LG against Obey. What is there to say about either one of those? Sabo.
Well, let's start a search party for Homie Faye because it's about the only thing you can say. I mean,
yeah.
Like, the dude continues not to show up at lands, and I don't know why. He's one of the best junglers online that we have in NA. Probably the best jungler that we do have in NA online. That's the key, online. If you're not performing at lands, you can't call yourself the best jungler. And I don't know why he's not doing as well at lands. I don't want to say it's land jitters because, like I said, he's been to every land for the past year except for Worlds. And so I don't know what is going on with Homie Faye. I said last week I didn't think Space Station was going to put up much of a fight, and I was right because Rival destroyed Space Station. It wasn't really a contest in either game.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go. Amazon Cap was played once in the summer split, and it was the last week, and he was played by Flashpoint.
So yeah, okay.
When they had Anubis mid, so basically he wasn't played.
Well, go back to the spring. I can guarantee you, Snoopy played Amazon Cap at least twice.
Please do not look through all games of the spring split as well. Yeah, to go back to the actual set we're talking about now, which is obviously Space Station against Rival. I think both me and Psycho said last week that it would depend on the type of rival that showed up, right? And we obviously saw a great, amazing rival this weekend. So it's clear. It was clear at that point that Space Station wouldn't stand a chance to me, just because of the rival that we saw show up, right? And obviously, we've gone into the issues before. I think the issues with Homie FA before. I think this LAN actually proves that he just doesn't show up at them in general. So you were right, and it's worrying because you need to be, as you said, you need to be good on LAN as a jungler if you want to have a place on a top team, honestly.
Say that again. I want to hear it one more time.
Well, you were right.
There you go. I got a big smile on my face. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, enjoy that moment. Like you as a North American, you don't have too many things to enjoy right now, so.
I know it's too early to talk about roster changes for Space Station. They're going to continue to make it to LAN because how good they are online. But Homie Faye is still that issue at LAN, and if this team wants to do anything in the fall, as far as super regionals and then making it to Worlds, Homie Faye has to play better than he did in this set, or than he does at any of these LANs. Because, like I said, we need a search party for Homie Faye when he comes to these LANs, because the guy might as well have his mugshot on the side of a milk carton. I mean, I don't know what else. Like, I know a lot of people are going to say the same thing I'm about to say, but people are not going to agree with me. But I'm going to come out and say it anyway. Homie Faye needs to be removed from this roster.
Yeah, I think it depends on what they want to focus on, right? And going into the summer split, you could have made the argument that he had to be there just because you might only make it to LAN with him there, because there were only 3 spots for NA, obviously. But now looking into the fall split, where we are going to have a fall gauntlet leading into super regionals, I don't think you can make the argument that a player that is this weak on LAN has a place in a roster that is trying to win LANs or make it deep into LANs.
Roster from top to bottom is talented. Jigs is one of the best support players in North America. Obviously, Anister's been one of the best players, regardless of role, for a number of years now. Fino K is probably the rookie of the season, and Bettium, good solid hunter, may struggle at times, but has, for the most part, not had any negative effect on his team. Homie Faye is in such an important role that if you don't perform in that role, the rest of the team struggles. And if he, you have enough evidence there that you can see that he's not performing at these LANs. He might help you get there, but he's costing you at these. He's costing you games at these lands, and if this team wants to have success in the fall and not just making it to land, they need a new jungler.
Yeah,
Because like I said, Homie Faye is one of the best online, but the dude's just not there in these live events.
yeah, yeah. I agree with that, and honestly, that's why I think it's important that we're talking about the fall split now, because as I said, in the fall split, we are going to have all teams on LAN at the Gauntlet LAN, right? So how do you justify having a jungler that has proven to be weak at LAN now if you're going to go anyway, right?
I don't think you can.
So yeah, and I'm honestly sad to say this, right? Because I like Homie Effie as a player. I've always thought that he was one of the more interesting NA junglers. I've always hyped him up a bit due to his online performances, obviously. I've stated, I think, last season when he was in contention for best jungler in NA while Anninster was still jungling, that he was in contention. That's basically what I said. I'm not sure where I was going with that sentence. But yeah, it's sad to see him underperform on LAN so consistently and so so badly, right? So I'm not sure he has a future on a top team, as I said.
Well, last week I said, at the Dreamhack review rather, I said that Landon's had the opposite meaning now. Well, it didn't. So my question to you is, Enninster doesn't really perform at LAN either. So why should you keep Enninster on the team and kick Homie if they are both equally bad at LAN?
I don't think Andy is equally bad at LAN, right? We've seen, like as Sable pointed out, Homie has had consistently bad performances on LAN, especially if we factor in Dreamhack now. And Andy hasn't. Andy has had good LAN performances. I think he had a good one in the spring finals, but I'm not entirely sure if I remember that correctly. So I do not see him as a real issue, right? And I also think if you put a better jungler at his side during a LAN, that he is going to perform better as well. Because mid-jungle synergy is obviously a very important thing to the game, and if your jungler is underperforming, it will sort of trickle down onto your mid as well.
I agree with Roby. I mean, it comes down to the fact that we have seen Lannister perform well at lands. We've seen him perform badly at lands too, but we have evidence that he can play on lands and he can do it at a top level. We haven't seen that from Homie Faye, and I think that's the difference in whether one sticks around and one leaving the team or getting kicked from the team, is that we've seen that type of performance from Annister. We've seen him play well at lands and win a world championship at LAN. We haven't seen Homie Faye do really much of anything. So that's the biggest difference for me. You know what you're getting. You know what you're getting from. You know that there's potential for Andy. We haven't seen the potential for Homie Faye yet. As far as lands go, we don't know if he can. If he comes around in the fall split and at the fall split land, Space Station takes number one going into Worlds, and Homie Faye's the reason that they did so well. Yeah, there's your evidence, but we have nothing to suggest from his past that he's going to do that. We have we have evidence from the Andister's past that that's a possibility.
Yeah. And I also think just keeping Andy allows you a bit more options as to where you are going to go with this roster, right? If you kick Andy, for example, you're going to have to just bring in another mid, and you would have the best available. But yeah, that would really be your only option. I'm not sure if Stealth would be open to leaving Noble right now, but I somehow doubt it. If you, on the other hand, kick Homie, you can start talking about making different roster changes, right? You can potentially move Andy back in the jungle. You can bring in a Weaken and a Cyclone if you want to, potentially, even though it would be sad for the rookie of the split, obviously. But those are it just allows you more options for roster changes, right? And I think the more lucrative ones are the ones where you replace Homie with someone else and maybe make some more changes around that. But I don't see a real reason for kicking Andy when you're looking at how his performance has been on both LAN and offline, and just in general how the replacement options for him look, honestly.
Yeah, that is fair enough. I don't have much to say to that.
Yeah, so I think there's not much else to say about this set, honestly. Obviously, game 1 was a surrender at 20, and just a complete stomp outright. And game 2, they just looked scared. Space Station looked scared, and they never really got into the game, even though it was somewhat close kill-wise, right? And in the end, Rival came out as the clear winner of that set, 2-0. So yeah, another NA dream crushed. And
we just
now,
go on to the last NA set.
Yeah, I was gonna say now to move on to the last time that day that NA dreams were crushed was obviously in the set Obey against Luminosity. So Psycho, you seemed like you wanted to say something about that, so here's your chance to.
I'm just going to say that I don't think Scary D will be on LG for the fall split.
Oh, there's no way in hell he's going to be on LG in the fall split. If LG wants to make it to Worlds again, they better get rid of Scary D, because like I said, he got first blood in both games. And I know, against Obey, you're not really expecting LG to win, but you got to put up a better fight than that, man. I mean,
yeah. So, one thing I want to quickly say about Scary is Hinduman released a ranking of all players in the SPL in each position. He had Scary D as the 4th best solo laner of both regions, right? And it's just something I would heavily disagree with, honestly. Because if you are the 4th best, just to kind of lay that out there, you will not get soloed, I think, in both sets by the 3rd best, according to his list, Maniac, which did happen to Scary in this set. And yeah, it's bad. Really bad.
well, see, that's where we can disagree with the casters and their rankings of their players. I don't think Scary D is a good solo laner for Luminosity. Not with the potential this team, or not with the goals this team has. I don't think Scary D fits this team well. But I don't necessarily think he's the worst solo laner in the world. fifth best in the league or fourth best in the league, probably a lot. I would probably rank him seventh or eighth. But you look at the rest of the roster, the rest of LG's roster. Mask is arguably one of the top 5, if not top 4. If you take Homie Faye out of the equation, he probably is top 4. Barracuda, Snoopy, Ataraxia, Emilito, there's your top 4 hunters. And then, how can you rank supports? But, Jeff Henley's been one of the best for a long time. So it's not that I would say Scary D is bad. I just don't think Scary D fits right with this team. And his performances have been too inconsistent. When he's been at the top of his game, when he's been really good, he has been one of the best players to ever play solo. When he's bad, which is more often than not, doesn't look like he should really be anywhere close to a top tier Smite team.
Yeah. The issue I would have with them keeping him in solo is that there will inevitably be better options available going into the fall split, right? Because I very much doubt that Divios is going to stay on Team AI, so he's going to be a free agent, or at least looking to change team. I think Cyclone could also be open, even though he might want to stick together with Weekend, but then again, he's not always done that. So I just think it's hard to justify keeping Scary on this roster where there are better options available, according to my opinion, right? I think that's important to point out, is according to Hinduman's list again, those soloists that I just mentioned wouldn't be ahead of Scary. But in my opinion, they are, and in my opinion, it doesn't make sense to keep him if you can get someone better, just to try at least to try something, right? Because we've clearly seen that what LG has done with this roster has not worked against EU teams, and they need to do something else. If they want to compete against EU, they need to make changes, and Scary is the most logical change that you can make right now, in my opinion.
I would even put Walrus above Scary D as far as fitting with this team goes, and how the team wants to play. Walrus is just put the players side by side for a moment. Compare not just the obviously Scary D is going to have a bigger win-loss or better win-loss ratio than Walrus because he's been on LG for a better part of a year. But just look at the other factors in what their gameplay is, and I think Walrus fits better with this team because he can beat, he can get these wins in the lane that allows, Mass to get these invades off that are so important in the meta these days, about invading the jungler, getting the pressure, getting that mid solo jungle pressure on that side of the map to where, you can snowball off of that. Scary D hasn't done that, where we have seen Walrus more willing to take these fights earlier than what Scary D does. Scary D likes to play for the late game, and, a lot of his numbers, a lot of his kills are based on the fact that he does do pretty well in the late game. It's the rest of the game that he struggles with. I think Walrus is an all-around better player than he is. From start to finish, from the start of the game to the very end of the game, I think Walrus is a better fit. And so I wouldn't just say Divios is a better fit. I would also put Walrus as a better fit. But like you said, LG has to make a change, and the most logical one right now is Scary D. For the better part of last fall split, he was the main reason LG wasn't number one in NA.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, right? He is receiving a lot of criticism, I think, but he also deserves a lot of it, in my opinion. So, while it may be,
like I said, he's much more of a late game player than he is the early game player. But with the meta dictating that the early game pressure is so important for the late game, you got to have somebody who can play that early game better than what Scary D can.
When you say Scary D, the first thing that pops into my mind is Amaterasu. And he can't really get to play that in this meta. So I don't think he would do this bad if he could play those types of gods, but it's just not his meta right now, and he's losing the fights.
Well, the best early game character he's got is Ravana, and Ravana's played much more in the jungle than he is in solo lane these days. In
But
my
I'm also
opinion,
gonna say, yeah, go on, finish your point.
I said in my opinion, Scary D's best god is Ravana. Oh, you can go ahead.
When you were talking about who would fit better on LG, I still think the best, or one of the best possibilities, would be having Baskin go back into the solo lane and bring in a new mid laner.
yeah, that is another option that we haven't actually touched upon yet, at least not in this episode, right? That's always also a possibility for LG, obviously, because as we said as well, the best is most likely going to be available, and you can bring best into mid lane, shift Baskin back to solo, and LG would probably look like a better team. So
Well, you can also put Best in the solo. He was the solo laner for Cognitive Gaming during the fall split of season 2, so he's had that experience over there. So you got a lot of flexibility as far as roster goes with this LG team.
you should just have both playing both roles, right? Just they both practice both roles, and when you go into the match, you won't know which one's gonna be playing solo this game.
Yeah, Baskin, you want to solo this game? yeah, sure, I'll take the solo.
Hey, it's a brilliant idea. Just imagine the god pools it would open up, right? This is innovation. This is real innovation going on right now. LG, you should do it. Just because then you might have a chance against EU.
I still say an N18 wins Worlds, but it was not a good look at DreamHack.
Yeah.
I'm putting all my eggs in the E United basket. All right.
Yeah. Okay. you can go ahead and do that. I will just get my eggs from EU because they are a very reliable egg delivery machine, or whatever. Also called a chicken. So yeah.
I still think E United is the best NA team.
Yeah, we can talk about that at some other point, honestly. Because they were not at Dreamhack, they're not relevant right now, so please, calm down.
Alright, well, let's move on from this debacle. Let's talk about the rest of them.
Yeah. So just to quickly probably touch upon the last quarterfinal set that we had, it was the first one, but we've kind of skipped over it. It was Black Dragons, the LATAM team, against Dignitas, and as expected, the set was a 2-0 for Dignitas. So, what can we take away from this? Can we take anything away from this set, honestly?
You can take away the fact that Black Dragons got more experience on the international stage. It can only help them going forward in their own region. So, look for Black Dragons to make it to Worlds. I certainly do. And I think that's the game. Both games were I don't want to say stomps, but they were very much one sided in favor of Dig. I just think if you're Black Dragons, you got to look at this as, hey, we got experience. You know, we have now not only played live games against these EU teams, but you got to assume that they were scrimming against these teams the whole time. So, that can only help them out in their own region. And so you got to take the good with the bad if you're Black Dragons right now. And just having more experience at these lands and on international stages against international teams only helps them going forward.
I think that's a question who is Black Dragons scrimming, because we know that Licht or Lich, for example, they were scrimming with Eager when Eager was good and around. But what I took away from this is that Latin America just follows the general meta we have now, and doesn't have something completely different like China once had.
Yeah, I don't think LATAM has ever been too special, right? Because a lot of the players that are playing there have previously played on NA servers back when there were no LATAM servers, and yeah, it's just I think they've always sort of been inspired by the NA meta, and their picks in this tournament seem to demonstrate that as well, in my opinion.
But it's still good for them as far as learning wise to have this experience against these top teams, whether it's EU or NA. EU might be the best region in the world, but you also got to say NA is the second best region in the world.
Yeah.
And getting experience, no matter what team it is, if you're outside of one of those two regions, getting experience against those two regions only helps you, individually as a team. The more chances you have to get that experience, the better. So you have to take the good with the bad. You're gonna get stomped, but got to take it as a learning experience.
Yeah.
Also, Zeros can play Thoth.
Yeah, he's expanded his god pool.
We're up to 4 now.
Yeah, just if he keeps going at this pace, he's gonna have like 6 or 7 gods at Worlds. So
yeah, I have a little surprise for you later today.
Okay, yeah, let's look forward to that. One thing I want to talk about in terms of Black Dragons as well is they were obviously kind of fucked by the seeding of this tournament, right? Or just by the tournament format more accurately, because they faced the top seed in the first round, and you're out if you lose a single round. So how do we think their chances would have been had this been a different tournament format, had they faced some of the NA teams that were at this tournament?
Well, I can tell you what would have changed. There'd been an NA team in the semifinals.
No, I don't even mean like that. I mean, if we had group stages and those leading into semifinals, and you had 4 EU teams, so they wouldn't have gone through. But do you think no matter what group configuration you would have had, Black Dragons would have always ended up as the last team in each group?
Yes, I want to say yes. I do. Like I said, EU's the top region. NA is the second best region in the world. Even though we have seen Black Dragons take a game off of Eager at the spring finals, Eager still won that match, and so it's they might have fared better against some of the NA teams, but I still would have expected them to be last in that situation.
Yeah, I think I can generally agree with that. What I just think is they would have more of an upset potential against some of these weaker NA teams, right? With how bad Space Station looked going into this LAN, I think there would have been potential there for a team like Black Dragons to upset them.
Yeah, I think you're right. Trifecta and LG were beaten Black Dragons. Black Dragons was as bad as Space Station looked. I think Black Dragons could have beaten them. I do believe it, and that's something to say about the top NA team coming into this. That they played so bad that you think the Latinum team could have beaten them.
Yeah, it's pretty insane, honestly. But yeah, I think that's Black Dragon's story. Is they got fucked by having to play Dignitas in round 1, and they were out of the tournament in 54 minutes total. 55 if you're being generous. So, yeah.
But you gotta assume that they scrimmed these teams before the tournament and during the tournament. So,
yeah, I think that's.
They lasted 55 minutes, but they got a lot more game experience than just the 55 minutes.
Nah, it wasn't even 54. It was like 53 and 50 seconds, maybe.
No, it says here it was 26:07 in the first match and 27:44 in the second one. So that is 53. Yeah, 54 minutes. Around 54 minutes.
Oh. Math is hard, don't judge me.
Yeah, it's good. So yeah,
All right, we're an SPL show. We're not a math show. Let's go. Let's move on.
Yeah. So yeah, Black Dragons taking experience home, but not much else. But yeah, then as the tournament went on, obviously with only the high quality EU teams left, I almost said something wrong there. We had our semifinals, which were Dig against Energy and Rival against Obey. And they were both interesting sets, right? But for sort of different reasons, if you ask me. So yeah, Psycho, can you tell us about Dig against Energy?
Surprise, Zeros also played Yanis.
Yeah,
Up to
great.
5. That's 5.
Not this set, but he did.
Cool.
But anyway, this set...
We'll keep tally marks for every god Zero plays. Every time he plays a new one, we'll just add another tally mark.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
Zero's god pool. It keeps growing because there's not much else it can do.
Hit no fits on one hand.
Yeah, great.
Anyway, about the set. It was a 3-0, but probably the closest 3-0 you can see. Because game 1 and 3 were basically... Okay, NRG had a pretty lead in the first game, and one fight lost in the game. And the third game was also around 50 minutes. And it could have gone either way. Game 2 didn't happen. Basically.
Yeah, like it was almost over so fast that you could think it didn't actually happen.
With the production at Dreamhack, it also might have not happened at all.
I gotta ask you, what was up with the Ao Kwong pick in game 3?
No, I think that pick made a lot of sense, right? I remember I was sitting in our chat again during the set, and as they picked the Neef, I said it would be mid, which it was. As they picked the Kwang, I said they would go double hunter, which they did. So yeah, no, I think it makes sense in a composition.
I'm not saying it didn't make sense in composition. I'm saying what I'm getting at is that this Wait, is this the first game we've seen Ao Kwong in the entire season? If I'm not wrong, this is the first time we've seen Ao Kwong in the entire season, and you bring it out in the game you really need. Like that goes from a extreme pocket pick to a really really bad pick really fast.
I'm
Well,
not gonna bet on the whole season, but it was not seen in the summer split.
yeah, I don't think it was a bad pick, right? It did work for large portions of that game, and it looked good. So I'm not sure I would say it's a bad pick, right? The reasoning behind it is pretty fucking clear, in my opinion. It allows you to go a hunter mid, which is obviously something that Yaman can play. He has done so in the past a whole lot, and getting this sort of just getting a magical jungler in general is gonna allow you to go for a physical damage source in mid and ADC. And I think that itself makes him more valuable than he would otherwise be, even though teams haven't really been going towards it, just because the meta has been so different, right? Because the meta has heavily been focused around Bellona and Osiris, and pretty much both have to be picked by someone, and I think that's largely what has led to people going warrior jungles. Has just been that you kind of need to get Bellona and Osiris. You can't give them to the enemy, so you might as well play them both.
I think people tend to forget that Ao Kwang is actually one of Adapting's best gods.
I don't.
Like when I... Yeah, go on.
I'm questioning the situation, not the pick. The double hunter, you expect to see a mage jungler, and adapting has a really good Ao Kwong. I'm just questioning the situation that it's game 3 of a 5-game set, and you're already down 2-0. You need this win. Is Ao Kwong double hunter and Ao Kwong jungle the right composition for the situation?
Well, in my opinion, it is something different, and that makes it better than doing the same thing again, right? Which is, I think, sort of what they attempted to do in game 2, except with a more late game focused hunter. So just completely changing it up and trying to find success that way, I think is the better option of the two, right? If you have this choice between going with a vanilla comp again when the vanilla comp hasn't worked 2 games in a row, or trying something else and seeing if you can make it work, then I think it's better if you go with the different thing.
Yeah, like your first 2 games, it didn't work, so I don't think there's a point in keeping it for the 3rd game. You might as well just try to change it up and win the game with something else, then lose the game the 3rd time with the same thing.
Yeah, and we were saying that game 1 was close, and that Energy had a lead, but what it really came down to for me is were those late game team fights, right? And they looked better in those team fights. They looked like they weren't gonna get beaten in those late game team fights. So I'm not sure if it makes sense for you with a normal comp to try to engage them in those team fights again and try to win again when they have looked so solid. Unless you can sort of pick them apart, just find a solution to what is making them so good and find a way to dismantle it. But if you don't have that sort of thing, I think it's a better option to just go with something else that hasn't been proven to not work yet, which the Ao Kwang double hunter comp, in my opinion, was.
If we don't mind just me going off with the compositions now, and I want to just focus on one player and one god, and that would be Dimi on Bologna. You said a while ago that you want somebody on your team to pick Bologna and Osiris, that both have to be picked. But it didn't really... I didn't see anything from Dimi on Bologna. I think he played it, 3 times in the 2 games they played. And he didn't have a single kill on it.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not how you...
Let me just
Well-
check. Yeah, he played it 3
I'll-
times, didn't get a single kill. You're right.
But did they win? I think. Did they win with him on?
They won one
I
think
game
they won one.
with him on Bologna.
Yeah.
Game 2 against Trifecta, which is obviously, as we've already gone over, a huge sort of blunder. So yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
just looking back at his history with Bologna, he did play a lot at the Season 2 Worlds. Bologna and Osiris and Xingtian were kind of the rule of thumb when it came to solo laners back then, but like he's got history of success on the character, much like Benji has a history of success on Osiris, but he was 0-6 on Osiris during the split, and that was win-loss. He had 0 wins on Osiris this split, but like the history of the character for that player would suggest that it wasn't a pick that they couldn't find success on. It was just maybe his build was a little bit janky, or I'm not sure. I can't remember quite what it was, but I wouldn't go as far as saying Timmy on Bologna was a bad call. It's for some reason it didn't work out, and it could just be Bologna is so popular, and you see her every game that teams now know how to play around her and find out where she struggles the most and take advantage of that.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if this weekend is sort of to be taken for. Let me let me start that sentence again. I don't even think you can look at Dimi from this weekend and look at this as a normal Dimi performance, right? He didn't have a good weekend overall. Actually, had a pretty terrible one. And yeah, I don't think the picks were the issue with that, honestly. If I'm being honest, I think it was just a bad weekend from him, and I think Bologna on him can work, even though it didn't this weekend, right? Just because Dimi in general really underperformed.
Yeah, everybody has a bad weekend, right? Not pros do make mistakes. Sometimes you expect them to have just poor performances, unless your name is Homie Faye, and you're always expected to have a bad performance. But Demi, 2-time world champion, you don't expect him to struggle as much as you normally would anybody else. But this was very much a weekend where it was just a struggle for him. And looking at the competition he had to face, going from someone with the playstyle of Kiki to somebody with the playstyle of Variety, which dude, vastly different playstyles. Kiki's more of a slow solo laner, where Variety's more of a I'm gonna fight you now, and I'm gonna fight you 2 minutes from now, and I'm gonna fight you 4 minutes from now. I'm just gonna keep fighting you. So the vast contrast of the players he had to play against this weekend, and it has a factor in in it.
Yeah, just what I mean is that I think this is not the end for Demi or anything. I just think this is a one bad performance or one bad week's performance from him, and we have to look how he improves or how he plays going into the fall split again, to see if NRG is going to need to look for a replacement for him, honestly. But at this point,
No, I don't think so.
You're jumping the gun there. I don't think Demi's getting replaced.
yeah, like that's what I'm saying. I think if he plays in the fall split like he did on this LAN, he is gonna get replaced at some point. But I do not see that happening. That was my point. I think this LAN is an outlier for Demi as far as performances go. I do not expect to see him having a bad form going into the fall. And yeah, that is pretty much it.
Well, okay. My question is, we've seen energy through the first two splits of this season. Is there anything there that would suggest to you that they're going to make it a three-peat? That they're going to be 3-time world champions? Or have we seen enough to say they're more than likely not going to win Worlds this year?
Well, right now, from what we've seen, I think we've seen them grow as the season has gone on. I think they're a better team now than they were at the start of the spring split or at spring finals. Sans Demi's poor performance, obviously, but I do not think that growth is going to be enough to consistently beat other top NA teams in these other top EU teams. I mean, obviously, in those big best of 5 and best of 3 series. So I don't think they're going to do the three-peat unless their rate of improvement somewhat increases going into the fall, and they somehow manage to get their act together more quickly than they have been doing so far. So yeah.
I'm not going to lie, that would be lovely to see. I'd love to see NRG win the Smite World Championship for the third time after struggling the whole year, and then just come back and get it again.
Yeah. I think watching an on-form NRG play is one of the most exciting things in Smite esports in general. So I would be excited to see that as well. But looking at how the season's gone so far for them, I do not expect it happening, right? So yeah. Sabo? Well, you're expecting an NA team to win anyway, so I guess you're not expecting the three-peat.
Well, I will say something, and that is we've been waiting on energy to really ramp it up, and for lack of a better term or lack of a better saying, wait the giant. When's it going to happen? When is this sleeping giant that energy is going to wake up and just start crushing people again? And nothing we've seen so far this year suggests that that's going to happen anytime soon. And if they figure it out and they get their act together for the fall split, this team is still good and still can be the best team in the world and can still win the world championship for a third year in a row. But like I said, we haven't seen it from them this year, so I'm gonna say it's more likely than not that they're going. They're not going to three-peat. I don't expect them to win a third one.
Yeah. We've obviously seen the potential that this team has, right? They've won 2 world championships. Just right now, as you said, or just right now, there's not enough things indicating that they're getting back closer to that peak performance that they can have. That's gonna suffice to really make a big impact in Worlds. So yeah, 3P to me seems incredibly unlikely, unless a lot of things happen that I do not expect to happen, right?
I agree with that. With how NRG are looking now, and more so with how the rest of EU is looking now, it doesn't seem very likely.
Yeah. And I think there's something else that's worth talking about as far as the set is concerned, and it's how Dignitas sort of beat Energy at their own game, right? Because what Energy's staple used to be are grouping up and team fighting, and they were by far the best team in those sort of scenarios, in these big team fights that happen once you start pushing objectives and towers. And we really saw Dig beating them in those. So the question sort of is, what does it say? What does that say about Energy, right? If a team like Dig can challenge them in their strength, how are things going to change even, right? For them to make a comeback against a team like Dig.
The thing with Energy for me, or the thing that most stood out about their past, is that when they were behind or when they were losing these team fights, they would always have somebody apply pressure on the other side of the map that would force out like a teleport or a rotation over from somebody, and then that person would back and then would get back to the team fight, and the scenario would completely flip from, it was a 5v4 to now it's a 5v4 in favor of them. And, we haven't seen too much of that this year. We haven't seen, what we have seen of it hasn't really worked in their favor. And I think it's just most of the teams are starting to realize that that's what Energy is trying to do, and not to give into it or something like that. And going forward, I want to see Energy kind of force that situation more and more. So, yeah. About all I can say right now.
Yeah. So are we ready to move on to the second semifinal set that we saw, which was Rival against Obey? How did that go? Sabo this time around. How did that go?
I think it proves the fact that what we were saying last week, that Rival is Lanimals, bunch of Lanimals, that they are a lot better on land than they are online. And going into this set, going into this week, I was convinced that Obey was the best team in the world, and Rival did 3-1 Obey, and so you can't really say that about Obey anymore. But I don't want to say Rival is flat out better, because it's just their track record on land suggests that they're better on land than they are online. So we may not even, if Rival's online, if they continue to perform like they do online, we may not see them at Super Regionals. It's very much a possibility that we don't see them at Super Regionals. I don't think we can say that about Obey, even though Obey lost this set 3-1. I do expect them to still make it to Super Regionals, Rivals stepped it up and played up to the competition. And one thing that stands out to me above everything else is not the jank picks, but the fact that every time Obey would find a fight, find a team fight, find 3-for-1s, or find something that they got a Gold Fury. You look up at the score and Rival is still up by 3K gold. No matter what what Obey did or whatever, Rival just had that 3K gold lead, and Obey could not make a dent in it, and that was pretty much all 3 games that Rival won for me. Is that they were able to farm the map a whole lot better than Obey did.
Yeah. No, they looked great. They looked great in multiple regards. Honestly, in my opinion, this weekend, obviously, them beating Rival Obey. As I said, I thought it would really depend on the type of performance that Rival showed up with, and obviously they've kind of solidified themselves as Lanimals now. Like, we've seen them in previous LANs really having strong performances, but it was really only 2 of them, right? Or really only one of them, if we're being honest, which was the Spring Gauntlet this time, this season. So with this performance, they've proven that they are Lanimals, in my opinion, but they just looked impressive overall.
But let's not forget they were 1 game away of not making it. One loss or 1 win from some other team, and they don't make it. Yeah. So,
but
then they were 1 game from winning it all. Like, you can't not make it.
That's what I'm saying, is that they're Lanimals. Their online performances are lackluster, and they don't. No one expected them after what they had, their performance they had against Elevate, where they completely looked lost. No one expected them to come in and be 1 win away. In all honesty, before Dreamhack started, would you have thought Rival would be within 1 game of winning the whole thing, or would you think it was more of Energy, Obey, or Dig?
Yeah, I think I would have trended towards the latter 3, but I think it was more us overlooking something than it was necessarily just something completely unexpected, right? Because we said in their set about their set against Space Station that if they show up in their usual form or in a good form, that they would easily 2-0 Space Station, which they did. What we did not consider is that if Obey didn't look as good as we maybe expected, that they could actually beat Obey in the semis. But they did. Oh, sorry about that. So I think it was us that disregarded this possibility, right? Because we had Obey built up to be this #1 team. They did not look like the #1 team this LAN. They didn't even look like the #2 team. Obviously. But that
kind of missed it.
But that's the thing, though. I think this set and Rival's overall performance this LAN is them stepping it up again, getting back to their normal level or even exceeding it to some extent, and Obey not getting to their usual level. And the combination of that led to this 3-0 victory over Obey, right?
When I rewatched those games, it just felt like Captain Twig was underperforming for Obey. I didn't even think Prime or Ataraxia had performances that were that bad, but Captain Twig didn't really show up in those 3 games except the first one. So I agree with what you said, that Obey just didn't show up in their usual form.
This is very much Rival playing up than it was. Obey didn't have a good game or a good set, but Rival played up. We weren't expecting them to beat Obey. Like we were expecting them to beat Space Station. That's a given, but we weren't expecting them to beat Obey. It would be dependent on how they played against them, and obviously they played really well. Obey didn't play as good as we thought they would, but this is their success at lands tells me that if Rival makes it to these lands events, they're always one of the ones that you got to look at to win it. Question is, are they going to make it? And they, like I said, they could have very easily missed this land, and we could have been talking about a completely different team.
Yeah, but as we said when talking about Space Station, this fall split is going to be different, right? In this summer split, only the top 4 teams went to LAN in EU, and there was no offline qualifier for the LAN. The SPL Gauntlet is an offline qualifier for the other LAN, for Super Regionals, and we're going to see all teams going to that, as far as I know. So I do expect them to make LAN, just because they are already guaranteed to make LAN, because they're guaranteed to go to the Gauntlet. And once they're in the Gauntlet, they can let their Lanimal performances out and sweep the Gauntlet and get to Super Regionals no matter what, right?
I'm just saying, like, Rival could be a contender for Worlds this year. And I'm not saying contender to make Worlds, I'm saying contender to win Worlds. Just based on the performances at lands.
Yeah, I think based...
No matter what they do online, like I said, once they make it to land, and since everybody's guaranteed to make it to land this split, you got to think Rival, as good as they play at lands, could potentially take the whole thing in January and walk away with the World Championship.
Yeah, I think you have to take all the 3 top EU teams that we see right now, so Dig, Obey, and Rival, as contenders for this World Championship title. Just because of what we've seen from them, right? We shouldn't disregard that Obey won Spring Finals, and Dig won Summer Finals, and Rival looked good in both of those tournaments. They made it to the finals in this one, obviously. So unless things drastically change going into Super Regionals and at Super Regionals, I think we should have all of those as the teams contending for Worlds, just based on their current performance, right? If their performance has changed, then we can add more teams to that list or remove teams from that list.
Big question for me will be, or a big matter for me will be, what the bracket will be like again. Because if Rival were to face Dignitas, for example, in the quarterfinals, it would take one of the title contenders out of it, and it would possibly only be Dignitas or Rival and Obey, and only in the semis, not even the finals. Like,
yeah.
and that's what you were talking about with Black Dragons going against Dignitas in the summer finals. So if you see something like that happen to one of the top 3 or 4, if we take in NRG teams at this World Championship, I don't think we will. Basically, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is that the World Championships have have a different format, right? We have a sort of groups in the World Championships, or we've had in the past at least, and I think Iris is going to do the same thing again. So I do not expect these teams to be facing each other that early, unless big upsets happen, which are obviously very difficult to predict. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
the format is 2 NA teams, 2 EU teams, 2 wild cards, a Latinum team, a Brazil team, an Oceania team, and then a Southeast Asia team. So, assuming that the format is kind of similar to like what they've done in the past, the number 1 NA team and the number 1 EU team will get buys in the first round, and then the other 8 teams will play like a round robin thing to see who makes it into that second round into the quarterfinals.
Yeah, like we've had sort of 3-man GSL groups, or no, we've had 4-man GSL style groups at Worlds. I think both times that we've had, or all 3 times that we've had a World Championship. So I don't think they're going to change the format now. And we've obviously had the same amount of teams as well. I think 10 teams in the last 2 World Championships. So I think they're going to use the same format, and this format only really makes top teams face other top teams if there are upsets. And as I said, hard to predict. So yeah. Yeah, but moving back to the sets, another thing that stood out to me was sort of how the picks that Rival won with, right? Because they tried a bit more janky stuff in game 1. They tried their Gap solo again and the Hui mid, and they lost that game. Then they went back to the more conventional picks going into the other 2 games, and they won the other 3 games, and they won all 3 of those. So that was a bit surprising to me, right? Because especially looking at how the later set went against Dig, they beat Obey with the traditional picks while losing with the Chang, even though the Chang is sort of supposed to be their specialty, that is making them, or part of what's making them strong.
I think that just goes to show that they can play both ways, that they can go the more conventional route, or they can win with the jank picks as well. And it's a strong look for the team, no matter what you try to pick and ban them or force them into, that they can play both and win against top teams with both styles of play. Like we brought up flexibility as far as roster concerns. Rivals a flexible team in picks and bans and all sort other, in a lot of the ways that other teams aren't. So it's just a strong look for them.
What I think made them lose jank pick game was that they didn't. It may be like a bit too bold to say this, but I think it wasn't not having Athena. Because in all the games that they played, those weird picks in the later stages, they had Athena to support Deathwalker in that solo lane when he played the Guardian. I think he wasn't alone in lane for longer than 30 seconds, and when he was, there was always that Athena ultimate to back him up if anything happens. And he didn't really have that in the first in the game against Obey that they lost. And in fact, it was banned all the games when those 2 played against each other.
Yeah. So that could have been could have played a role, definitely. Like probably had some impact on this. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Please don't play Ares solo in ranked games if you don't do it, because you won't have the support that Deathwalker had
Hey, what if
from the
you're
Athena.
what if you're duo queuing ranked and you're just gonna have your support in solo, like your dude picks support and you go solo and you just play together.
Well, you have to assume that your jungle will be trashed, so you can't do it anyway.
Yeah, but still.
Isn't that a ranked game? Jungle's trash.
Yeah, basically.
Hey, yeah.
I mean, in my personal experience, the jungle's always the one to blame.
Yeah, it's him or the support.
No, I play support, so don't blame the support.
No, do blame the support, please.
I play solo and support, and a lot of the times, the fact that I'm getting ignored by my own jungler is the reason I lose. Like,
No,
come
the
to
fact-
that side of the map, make an appearance in lane, show your face in lane once or twice. Don't just sit in the middle lane.
No, the reason you're losing from a jungler's
Blame-
perspective is that you're letting yourself get ganked.
Okay, I can have the most wards at the end of the game and always be warding, and that's still my fault because my jungler doesn't show his face in lane.
Well,
Blame the jungler. Blame the jungler 2017.
No,
Hashtag.
blame solo laners for losing their lane and getting ganked. Just blame lanes for getting ganked.
I wouldn't lose my lane.
What? No, don't go there.
I wouldn't lose my lane if it wasn't 2v1 all the time.
Nah, you're letting yourself get ganked. This is really off topic, guys. Please.
Blame the jungler 2017.
Sabo, don't bring your jungler hate up. It's not the time.
Right, hey, started this discussion, all right?
Psycho, don't bring up ranked. This is not the time for ranked. We're talking about actual high quality games here. So yeah, high quality games. This is a good word or term to describe the finals that we saw between Dig and Rival. Who wants to tell me about it?
This was a fun set to watch. I don't care if you're EU fan or if you're NA fan or if you're an Oceania fan. If you didn't enjoy this set, you're not a Smite fan, because this was I wouldn't go as far as saying it's one of the greatest sets in Smite history, but it was a pretty good set. And it was a good. As far as season 4 goes, this is probably the best set of the season.
This was without a doubt the best set of the whole summer split, if not the season, as Sabo said. And I'd say I would put it with the likes of Cloud9 versus Epsilon or Cognitive Prime versus Titan. Because this just showed that you don't really need. Like, come on, we saw Ares solo and they won the game with it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I think it is also one of the greatest sets of all time in Smite history, honestly. Just because all of the games were relatively close and we had special things happen in them, right? We have never seen. I don't think I've ever seen an Ares solo do well, but except this time. So yeah, this was really fucking special, and I think that's part of what makes a set good, is seeing something that is unique and just seeing high level play. And I think both teams showed extremely high level play during the set. It was just a joy to watch, honestly. Yeah.
okay, so where do you start with this set? There was so much great stuff going on that you can't really. You don't know where, really.
Yeah, just to list things that happened, right? We had Cuvo, dominate a couple of games. We had variety, dominate a couple of games, or well, one game, the last one, honestly. And we had Ares solo. We had Wolfie's Raw, just looking completely amazing. We had Vote having a great game as well, right? Pretty much.
No.
Yeah.
You're forgetting Arkle's ROM, which I think he's probably my MVP for the entirety of DreamHack because he played so well, and his ROM was just crazy for this last set. I think he played it like 3 times, and they won all 3 games with it.
No, he only played it twice, but they did win both games with it. So
well, his Hoi game was also like spectacular. The second game, he played Hoi, and he absolutely he played great. The second game. It's not only his RAM, it's his Hoi as well. And also Zeros played Giannis the next game. What a great thing to happen.
yeah, it's great. Like honestly, this is a great set. There would be so much to talk about, but I can't choose what we're supposed to talk about. Just Ares solo.
Ares solo is the one that stands out. I agree with that.
Right.
Really hard to pick out. Really hard to pick out one of your favorite moments because it was all pretty good, and it was, like I said, it was a fun set to watch. And if you watch the set and you're just bored, you're crazy. This was a good set to watch. And
yeah.
I would. Y'all brought up season 1 Worlds and season 2 World semifinals. Those matchups. I would also put Enemy and Energy at the Epsilon Invitational, that 5-game set, as one of the top 3 sets of all time. But this one was definitely up there with those. But I still wouldn't say it's the best set of all time. It's still pretty good.
Yeah. I think the reason why it's in contention, as I said, is because all games are relatively close. And normally when we have great sets, this isn't even really the case, right? We can have storms from either team, which we didn't really see this set, which was the insane part. Only the last game was more stompy than the other ones, but outside of that, it all looked very even. And yeah. And we saw a fucking Ares carry a game. Like, I just can't get over it. Honestly, it's not just the set that is great, one of the greatest in my opinion. It's also game 3 of the set, and that is one of the greatest single games within a set of all times.
Let's focus on that Ares solo. We normally see Ares in support, and supports are usually a level or 2 behind everybody else, and if not 3 levels behind everybody else. Putting Ares in solo where he can get solo farm, and where he's very much a character with the reputation where if he's ahead, he can snowball the game out of control or carry a game completely, and that's what we saw from this. And, he got levels, he got items, he got ahead of everybody else. Solo laners are usually ahead of, or at least a level ahead of everybody else on their team or in the game. And with Ares being ahead, you see what happens. Ares is able to completely carry a game.
No, we don't see. You said it wrong. We never see Ares almost. And now, I think you can compare this to the Ao Guang adapting played earlier. Yes, this Ares came out of nowhere and just carried the game on.
Like you could compare it to the Ao Guang if Ares had been a popular solo at some point in time previously, and if Deathwalker had a history of playing Ares solo, neither of which was the case. It was even more fucking surprising than the Ao Guang.
I'm saying though that this Ares is really good from ahead, and every time we see him, even though it's not it's not a lot, but if whoever's playing Ares gets some sort of lead, they can completely control the game, and this is what we saw in this game. Ares got a lead. Ares got level lead on everybody, and Ares from ahead is scary, and Deathwalker proves it in this game.
Yeah,
Ares
that's
from ahead is a scary thing, and he's probably one of the only 3 or 4 gods in the game that you don't want to see ahead, because if he's ahead, he's going to destroy you.
yeah. It's just that's just how the game at its base works, right? Guardians are designed to work from behind, so when they get a chance to get ahead, they just completely wreck everything. That's why Guardian solos have always had a bit more volatility than the Warrior solos, because they have, weirdly enough, more carry potential, in my opinion. But yeah, just Guardians from ahead become unkillable and can actually kill you, especially Ares. Ares can probably kill you anyway, but if he's ahead, he just kills you with half as much effort. So yeah, Ares solo.
3 chain and a flamethrower, yeah, you're gonna die.
Yeah, and everyone was getting so hyped. Like, the entire set was just so hyped up. Or this match especially, right? You had casters going fucking 1 chains, 2 chains, 3 chains. And it was awesome. Great set.
I think that was F. Dot trying to become a rapper.
Yeah, 3 chains.
Because he was the one. He every time you heard 3 chains, it was from F. Dot. I was like, you're just trying to be a rapper now. It's 2 chains, not 3 chains. Get off my stage, boy.
we need a rapper Ares skin.
No, we don't need a rapper Ares skin.
We do, where he's called 3 chains. With a sad, obviously.
I'm just really sad that Elevate got the Ares team skin right now.
That's a good skin, though. I'm gonna give it credit. That's a good skin.
And it fits Elevate really well, because Stardust is a great fucking Ares.
I'm not discrediting that, but after this set, I think it's yeah.
Okay, so if Deathwalker, if Rival ends up winning Worlds with Ares solo, we need to see an Ares skin for that.
Yeah,
the world. Ares skin, yeah, that'll be fine. No, I'd say that'd be a good skin. That, or have a Rival Raw skin for Wolfie.
Yeah, that would work as well. I want
Oh, so I
Raw
have a
to be the
question,
normal skin. The normal team skin for Rival should be Raw.
Well, back to the grand finals. I mean, I don't know where to talk about this because it was all so good. I'm just going to say, hey, if you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. Even though you know who wins, just go watch the set. It's a fun set to watch.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you do not want to miss this set. If you are a Smite fan, if you like watching Smite esports, you need to watch this set. Otherwise, you are missing out massively.
I mean, five sets to watch in Smite history. This is probably one of the 5 sets that you want to watch. The others being Energy and Energy and Enemy at the Espelon Invitational. You also want to watch the Cloud9 Epsilon at Season 2 Worlds, and then Cog Red versus Titan, and then Season 0, the launch tournament. I think it was Team Dignitas versus Team Solo Mid. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, the finals.
Where Game Hunter picks up the first pentakill, and
well, I think that was in a best of 1 between those two. Like, they played a best of 1 before the finals, at that tournament, and I think the Pinnacle happened in that best of one. But they obviously then played again in the finals.
Yeah, and that 5-game set was a good one too. So go watch that one. So those are the 5 that if you're asking me, you need to go watch. Some of my favorite Smite. Those 5 games right there.
Yeah, I think I'd have a similar list. We should compile those for next week. Honestly, just all make our definitive top 5 sets in Smite history list.
Watch. Also go watch game 2 of Eager versus Team Soul Mid in the fall season or fall of Split season 2, where Divios backdoors Wukong with the Wukong clone.
Yeah. No, you should go watch. Okay, we're going far back now. Team Dignitas against Cog Prime in season 1. I think the second game they played in that season, where the Dignitas support DCs and they go on to backdoor Cog Prime's Titan with the Honest ult in a 4v5 and win the game off of that.
I remember that game.
Yeah.
I think I remember that one too. That was wild. And then
It was like
enemy
40 minutes as well.
Phoenix. The first game or the first set of season 3, enemy skipping the Phoenix to take a what is it, hour and 15-minute game against LG. Very first game of the season.
I think Allied was testing that game as well.
Yeah, that was one of Allied's casts.
Yeah.
I remember that because he kept bringing up the Tom Clancy moves.
Yeah.
Dude, the Tom Clancy thing.
Yeah. Cracking my brain.
This grand finals set was up there with all of those. It was a very good set. So I don't know where to start talking about it. Honestly, it was fun to watch.
Yeah. I think it's probably a set that everyone listening to this should go watch and not just listen to us explain what happened or what was important in the set. But it just in general was a great set in multiple ways. So yeah. This being said, is there anything specific left that you want to talk about regarding this set?
Not this set, but
No,
do we want to talk about Dreamhack and as a whole and give out MVPs or?
Yes, that would be the next thing we would do. So, how did you guys experience this Dreamhack tournament as a whole, maybe to start off this discussion? Did you enjoy what you saw? Well, I guess you did.
I guess I'm gonna go
I
first.
enjoyed it.
Or not.
I'll go first. I enjoyed it for the most part, even though NA completely crapped the bed once again. I thought it was a good tournament for the most part from what we saw from the top teams, and even some of the first round of games had their highlights, right? I mean, it wasn't. The games weren't competitive in that first round, but they were entertaining to a point. And like brought up game 2 of Trifecta versus Energy. That was a really, really interesting game to watch. And as the tournament went on, games just got better and better, and it was to end it the way that they did. It was a very good. Very, very fun tournament to watch.
Yeah, I think as far as the actual play is concerned, this tournament was fulfilled all my expectations. Right, we saw a ton of great sets between great teams, all performing at a really high level, and it was just generally very impressive overall. It was plagued by some technical difficulties, obviously, like we didn't see the end of Game 2. But apart from that, of Game 2 between Trifecta and Energy, but the play itself is nothing that you can really criticize at this event. So yeah.
Yeah, you bring up the game going down. Like, how do we know Energy actually won?
Yeah, it's all rigged, right? Trifecta
rigged,
should have
they
been too. That's why they looked so shaken
Trifecta.
during Game 3, because they actually won, but just Hi-Rez didn't want to recognize it.
They got told, you know, Energy can't lose here, even though you won Game 2. Y'all, we lost. You know, we turned the game off, so nobody can tell that you won Game 2. So you have to play Game 3, and Energy has to win.
Yeah.
Dial it in, boys. You're going home. And that's why Eonic left the team. There you go. He didn't leave for school. He left the team because Hi-Rez has a bias for Energy.
Also, the Earth is flat.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
On a different note, at least the game for us just left the spectator UI and didn't completely crash like Paladins twice.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was it was actually the Chinese team. I think it was the first time they played, and they they won the first fight, and the whole thing crashed, and it just didn't respond.
So
they had to restart it, and it crashed again.
See, if they were the ones losing, I would have just called. I would have just said that they were obviously DDoS the server to prevent themselves from losing, right? Because Chinese hackers. Yeah. But yeah.
Let's go ahead and give out VPs. Y'all want to?
Yeah, let's make it quick. Psycho, do you want to start?
Okay, before the LAN, I thought it would be Captain Twig, but now I would have to give it to Arkil, even though I think the official MVP was given to Kiro Fred. Arkil was the one for me, because he didn't really have a terrible game. He just was always there, and when he was really there, he carried the game. As we already said, his Ram and his Hoi are both insane.
Yeah. Before the tournament, I was going to give it to Adapting. I think if they had gone to the finals, he probably would have deserved it, but this way, obviously, didn't. Even though he was playing at a much higher level than the rest of his team, by the way, but still. So yeah, with him not getting it, obviously, I think I'm gonna agree with Hi-Rez on this one. They gave it to QO Fred. I think QO deserves it in this case, just because he was one of the most consistent and positive members of Dig during this entire tournament. Obviously, there weren't a lot of negatives about Dig in the tournament, but generally he had a massive impact in all of the games he played, and he carried some of them. I think also he carried the most games out of everyone on Dig, honestly, and just generally really impactful and really good performances out of him. So he's my MVP.
Yeah, and for me, I agree with Psycho. Very much Psycho and I are on the same mind here. We both had Captain Twig as the MVP before Dreamhack even started, and then obviously as the tournament played out, we got to see Dignitas come to the forefront and really win. You know, they won the entire tournament. I think it's completely on the back of Arkil. He didn't have a bad game, and in the games he did have an impact on. He was extremely impactful. We really didn't get to see him put himself out of position a whole lot, and it was a solid performance from the entire team. But Arkle is my MVP. So
Yeah, I can live with that, honestly. So, something else that we just quickly could talk about as well is roster changes that were announced to be happening or that will happen going into the fall split. And there's two that have come up. You already mentioned one of them, Ionic leaving Trifecta, just very briefly. And well, he mentioned that he's taking time off for school. So yeah, it's sad to see for Trifecta, obviously, because they looked so good in their set against NRG, and I think if they had gotten some more time to grow together, they could have even been better. With Ionic leaving, I think it's gonna set them a bit back, but assuming they get a good replacement as someone like an Aurora or a Pain de Beyond, I think you mentioned as well. I think they can recover. It's just questionable whether they're gonna have enough time between now and Super Regionals to fully recover and get back to a level where they can contend for one of the world's spots out of NA, in my opinion.
Yeah, the support is an important cog in that middle game synergy with the mid, jungle, and support playing such a heavy factor in that core. So losing Ionic is a blow to Trifecta because they did look so good. They're only in 18 that looks good at this tournament. So yeah, depending on who they get, Aurora, Pain de Beyond, whoever it is, might even be Nirma or Incon, could make a return to the support role. Depends on who they get. I mean, the rest of the roster is solid, but the support just has such a big impact on the core of the game or on the core of the team that it hurts them.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to take just look at how Trifecta does going into the fall, how different they look. But I'm still expecting good things from them, honestly, going into the fall split. So yeah. The other roster change that is going to be happening is that Oshaboom is gone from the Poppies, and they're bringing in a new guy who is called Mr. Nazer. And I'm gonna be honest here, I have never heard of this guy. So, has any of you heard of him?
Take my silence for what it's worth, because I've never heard of him.
Yeah, I would expect him to be some sort of Spanish dude who does things.
Yeah, he is Spanish, I think.
So yeah,
Spanish.
So yeah, like we talked about in regards to Poppies, if they want to keep their calling Spanish, which obviously they've now decided to do if he's also Spanish, then they're gonna have to rely on this smaller talent pool, and it's probably not gonna be the most impressive guy, although I'm not gonna judge him before we actually see something out of him. But so far, I don't think any of us have high expectations for him right now, which is generally curious, I think, as to how he's actually going to perform. But
they also have to. Puppies is also a team that has to make it out of relegation, so we don't know if we're going to see him for the full part of the fall split if they get eliminated in relegation.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest again, I haven't been following the Challenger series enough to judge how good their chances are to actually do that, make it through. We're gonna do something else about relegations at some later point in time.
I know EU. I don't know if they made it, but I know some of the EU Challenger Cup teams, Frostiak and Zashu and what's his name? Murder, I believe is his name.
Oh yeah.
They're on a team. I think Game Hunter has a team down there too. I'm just not sure if they're the ones on relegation or not. So, but yeah.
So I think that is all we really need to talk about this week. Do you have anything else to say that you want to get out there right now?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Mine's not related to the SPO. Go ahead.
I think Murder is on a team with Game Hunter right now.
So yeah, I think we're gonna try to look into that as far once we get to relegations, right? I'm not entirely sure when they're gonna be happening, but we're probably gonna.
We got a month. We got the Energy Invitational up first.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about that when it's time for it, right? So, and really take a look at those challenger teams that are gonna come up and look and judge how their chances, how we would see their chances. That's a hard word. Their chances for making it into the SPL over the established teams. But yeah, Sabo, you had something else?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago I did a plug for a friend of mine who streams on Twitch, and I'd like to do that for somebody else who's a friend of mine as well, who has given me permission to come into her channel and promote our podcast whenever she's on. And so I want to go ahead and return the favor and plug a streamer by the name of Lacey Mosa, or Lacey Mosa. I'm not sure. There's a random R. It's spelled Lacry, Mosa, Mosa. I don't know if the R is pronounced or not, but check her out on Twitch. Give her a like. She's a really kind person. She's been a lot of the esports players know her. She has been at the past two, or she's been at the first two worlds. She didn't go to the last one. She had some financial troubles. She wasn't able to make it, but Hindu Man knows her. She has pictures with the Energy guys, back even at season 2 worlds when they were Epsilon, so she's well known in the community or in the esports scene already, and she's doesn't have a lot of followers on Twitch, but she's entertaining. She's a nice person, and I just want to go ahead and plug her for any of our listeners. Go check her out.
Yeah, go and do that. I will put a link to her Twitch channel in the video description. So, yeah. And thanks to her as well for allowing us to promote our own podcast there. Yeah, we're really grateful for this. Good. So yeah, I think that was it from today, or for this week from the Tuesday Night Smite podcast. If you did like this episode, do remember to actually like it on YouTube or SoundCloud or wherever else you are listening or watching to this. You can subscribe to us on YouTube as well if you want to be notified when the next episode comes out, or just when new episodes come out. You can follow us on SoundCloud to have the same thing happen there. Also, please, if you want to follow our Twitter account at Tuesday Night Smite for various things that happen there from time to time, and for any updates we have during the week about the podcast. Yeah. So, thank you all for watching / listening to this. And we hope to see you next week as well. Thanks to you two guys for being here with me again. It's always a pleasure, as I'm sure I've pretty much always mentioned. And yeah, to end the show, good night, good Smite.